So he just stepped in the boxcar. Gomez took the handcuffs off of him, handed him the shank, and then Silverstein come running out with the shank in his hand. And the guard that was standing there with him, he just put his hands up, stepped back out of the way, and said, "Tommy, don't do it." Tommy said, "Hey, I don't want you, I want him." So he run past that guard, he went down there and started stabbing on Clutch. Well, now after Clutch was killed, the administration would not let the guards go down that range to shake down and get the weapon. They wouldn't let the guards shake down any cells. They said, "No, just go ahead and run these guys to showers and wreck cages like nothing happened." We said, "What about Clutch's blood all over the place here?" He said, "Well, you let these new guards walk through that man's blood. That way they'll remember how goddamn dangerous their job is." And as I was coming up to the unit, Officer Palace came stumbling out the door, and he was all covered in blood, and he fell down to his knees, and says, "Get Hoffman, Hale, get Hoffman." So I turned around and run into the hospital, which is right there next to me. I run in there to get a stretcher. And when I run in there, I saw Ditterline laying there on the bed and had blood squirting out of his left side, by his heart, just, bubbling up. So I grabbed him in a bear hug to help stop the bleeding, and I moved him off that table onto another table because I knew Hoffman was in real bad shape if they was all hollering for Hoffman,
September 27, 1982. Raymond Cadillac Smith L. was murdered. For more than 40 years, that killing has been retold in books, podcasts, documentaries, and across the internet. Today, many of those claims are repeated as unquestioned fact. Using federal court records, official Bureau of Prisons documents, contemporaneous newspaper archives, photographs, and interviews recorded closest to the events, we'll compare what the evidence documents with what later accounts claim. Because history should be judged by evidence, not repetition. Myth 1. Raymond Cadillac Smith concealed a homemade knife inside his towel, stabbed Clayton Fountain. Thomas Silverstein then took Smith's knife, and Smith was ultimately killed with his own weapon. But where is the evidence? The published federal court record is remarkably straightforward. Thomas Silverstein and Clayton Fountain cut through the recreation enclosure, entered the shower area, and stabbed Raymond Smith 67 times with homemade knives. That is what the court establishes. Just as importantly, the court does not establish that Smith possessed a weapon. It does not conclude that Smith stabbed Fountain. It does not conclude that Silverstein killed Smith with Smith's own knife. Those details do not appear in the judicial findings. Nor do they appear in the earliest available reporting. Even Blood and Blood Out, a book frequently cited by modern documentaries, describes Smith as showering when the attack began. Contemporary newspaper reports describe the same sequence. 2 inmates escaped the recreation enclosure, rushed Smith in or immediately outside the shower. And within seconds, he had been stabbed dozens of times. The earliest documented sources describe a surprise attack, not a prolonged knife fight. There is another inconsistency. Those new retellings often portray Clayton Fountain as carrying the only weapon, while Thomas Silverstein, the much bigger, stronger, and more seasoned convict, supposedly entered the attack unarmed until taking Smith's knife. But the historical record doesn't establish that scenario. Years before Raymond Smith's assassination, the Bureau of Prisons records documented Clayton Fountain carrying a homemade knife during another confrontation in Marion's control unit involving a D.C. black inmate. That incident ended with Fountain being stabbed in the neck before retreating toward correctional officers. Whatever one concludes from those facts, they do not support the later narrative that Silverstein entered the attack unarmed and only became armed after supposedly taking a knife from Smith. Myth 2. Cadillac Smith stabbed Clayton Fountain. Another claim repeated for decades is that Smith stabbed Fountain in the chest. In an interview on YouTube of a former dropout member AB who was housed in Marion during the attack, stated that Raymond Cadillac Smith was unarmed, that only Thomas Silverstein and Clayton Fountain carried homemade knives, and that Fountain's injuries occurred when he was accidentally cut by Silverstein during the melee while both men were attacking Smith. Photographs taken immediately after the incident show Fountain with multiple superficial lacerations rather than a single penetrating chest wound described in later retellings. Myth 3. Raymond Smith entered the shower in handcuffs. This claim appears frequently online. But the timeline tells another story. Federal court records explain that after Raymond Smith's murder, the Bureau of Prisons dramatically tightened escort procedures. From that point forward, high-security inmates such as Silverstein and Fountain were routinely restrained and escorted by multiple officers whenever they left their cells. Those procedures were implemented because of the Smith murder. They were not the procedures in place before September 27, 1982. Confusing post-incident policy with pre-incident conditions changes the historical timeline. Myth 4. Robert Chappelle was from Washington, D.C. Many modern accounts describe Robert Chappelle simply as a member of the D.C. Blacks. But another documented fact is often omitted. Robert Chappelle was from Buffalo, New York. Before entering the federal prison system, he had already been convicted of second-degree murder and accumulated disciplinary problems while incarcerated in Connecticut before being transferred to Marion. Whatever prison affiliation he later developed, it does not change his documented background. History becomes distorted when labels replace documented facts. Myth 5. The murders of officers Merle Klutz and Robert Hoffman were unquestionably a turning point. But they were not the sole reason Marion entered permanent lockdown. Contemporaneous newspaper reports show that the prison resumed operations after the officers' murders. Violence continued. Racial conflict between the Aryan Brotherhood and D.C. black inmates continued. Inmate assaults continued. Staff assaults continued. On October 27, 1983, white inmate Jack Callison was killed in what prison officials described as retaliatory gang violence by two black inmates. That same day, major confrontations erupted between D.C. inmates and correctional staff. According to prison officials quoted in contemporaneous newspaper reports, inmates attempted to move toward their cell blocks to retrieve concealed weapons while threatening further violence. Officials concluded they were losing operational control of the institution. Only after this continuing series of inmate murders, retaliatory attacks, assaults on staff, and escalating racial conflict, did Marion become the nation's first permanently locked down federal prison. The contemporary documentary record describes a chain of escalating events, leaving out the incidents that involved D.C. and its affiliates on October 27, 1983, a part of the reason for lockdown. Not a single isolated incident. Done by Clayton Fountain and Tommy Silverstein. Why has so much information been withheld, and why distortion of facts?